Thanks for coming. Really appreciate it. My name is Joe. I think I know everybody here. What we thought we'd try and do this morning is give you some exposure to some of the what's new stuff with some of the kind of core hero products for the Autodesk suites that you guys all pretty much have these days. So, you know, building suite customers using a lot of AutoCAD, using a lot of Revit, some Navisworks. Infrastructure suite customers using a lot of Civil 3D, maybe some InfraWorks. So again, we're going to try and hit a couple of the big ones up front, and then maybe get into some new stuff or some different things that you may have not been exposed to before. Towards the end of the presentation, that might be interesting to you. So the first thing in AutoCAD that you'll notice when you start the program is this new tab for creating and learning.
One of the first things you'll notice in AutoCAD 2015 is the New tab. The New tab contains two sliding content pages, Learn and Create. The Create page is displayed by default and serves as a launchpad where you can access files, product updates, and the online community. It's divided into three columns. In the Get Started column, you can use the Start Drawing tool to quickly begin a new drawing from a default template or choose from a list of available drawing templates organized by groups. The last template you use becomes the new default. Other tools enable you to open existing drawings and sheet sets, get more templates online, and explore sample drawings. In the Recent Documents column, you can view and open your recent drawings. You can pin them to ensure they remain on the list. Icons at the bottom of the column enable you to change how you preview the recent drawings: thumbnail view, text view, or thumbnail and text view. The third column enables you to sign into Autodesk 360 and send feedback directly to Autodesk. This column also displays relevant notifications about product updates, hardware acceleration, trial period, and offline help. You can slide to the Learn page from the Create page by clicking on Learn at the left or bottom of the page. To return to the Create page, click on the right or bottom of the page. The Learn page provides tools to help you learn AutoCAD 2015. It's divided into three columns: What's New, Getting Started videos, and Tips and Online Resources. These are all great resources for getting up to speed on AutoCAD 2015, whether you're a new user or an AutoCAD veteran.
The other thing you might have noticed in the environment, let me just go ahead and bring up the CAD real quick. In the lower right-hand corner, all of your status bar icons are a little bit different. You can customize which ones are available. So you might be able to see on the lower right-hand corner here, you've got, again, just hover over stuff so you can tell what it is. Ortho looks similar, Polar looks similar. Some of the other ones are a little bit different. And then you've got the option of clicking on the three bars in the lower right-hand corner. You can turn off, uncheck the ones that you might not use. If you're not doing isometrics, you turn that off and it's going to shorten that stuff. The more you shorten that stuff up, the more room you've got over here for the layouts that you might use. The one I get a lot is the hardware acceleration. So that's the one that looks like a little circle with a little meter on it. Some of your systems might handle the hardware acceleration really well. Others may have a graphics card that leaves a little left to be desired, right? So if you start to see weird things on your screen, fragments of line work, things not refreshing, consider turning this on or off as a good way to to get things going. Next video up is graphics improvements.
AutoCAD 2015 offers an improved graphics experience with smoother lines and accurate display of properties when creating and editing line geometry. Objects such as lines, arcs, and circles, and drawing aids like grid lines and the UCS icon look smoother, especially when drawn at an angle. You can enable smooth line display in the new Graphics Performance dialog box. This control is only for the display and does not affect plotting. In addition to smoother line display, complex line types display as you create and edit them, enabling you to more easily place them. You can control this behavior with the new Complex LT Preview system variable. AutoCAD 2015 also displays color, line type, and line weight for lines and polylines as you draw them. Selecting objects is more flexible and more obvious in AutoCAD 2015. You can click the cursor in a blank area of the drawing and then drag around objects to create a lasso selection. For a traditional rectangular window or crossing selection, click and release to pick each corner of the rectangle. A new control in the Options dialog box on the Selection tab enables you to specify lasso selection. When you select objects using any method, AutoCAD 2015 offers modern and clear feedback. As you pass the cursor over an object in the drawing, the line geometry appears thicker and darker or lighter depending on the background color. If hardware acceleration is turned on, selecting an object changes its color and it remains thickened to clearly identify it as part of the selection set. Similar visual enhancements help you clearly identify when faces, such as solid hatches or 3D solids, are selected. In AutoCAD 2015, you can preview the results of common editing commands before committing to them. When selecting an object to extend, for example, it is clearly identified and temporarily extended. When trimming an object, the segment to be removed is dimly displayed and a cursor badge indicates that it will be deleted. The Lengthen tool also supports Command Preview. It has been further enhanced in AutoCAD 2015 to default to the last lengthen option, such as delta, percent, total, or dynamic, so you no longer have to specify an option each time you launch the command. The Break tool displays the results of the break operation prior to specifying the second point. After selecting a source object from which to match properties, the Match Prop tool temporarily displays those properties on the destination objects as you pass the cursor over them to select. A new Command Preview control on the Selection tab of the Options dialog box allows you to enable or disable Command Preview for trim, extend, lengthen, break, and match prop, as well as for fillet, chamfer, and offset operations. The cursor is enhanced in AutoCAD 2015 with badges that reflect the state of many common operations. When within the Scale, Copy, and Move tools, relevant badges indicate the current operations. During a move operation, the selected objects are displayed in their original position with a faded deletion effect instead of a dashed selection effect. Rotation badges are displayed when specifying the angle of rotation during a rotate operation. The badge displays a clockwise or counterclockwise arrow according to the direction specified by the drawing units. An inspection badge is displayed when using inquiry tools such as Measure, List, and ID. Zoom and Erase and Delete also display relevant badges. Model space viewports have been significantly enhanced in AutoCAD 2015. They're more flexible and easier to use. After creating multiple viewports in model space, a bright blue boundary clearly identifies the active viewport. You can easily resize any of the viewports by dragging the horizontal or vertical viewport boundaries. Drag the intersection to resize viewports both horizontally and vertically at the same time. New plus icons on the viewport boundaries enable you to easily add more viewports by simply clicking on the icon and dragging to size the new viewport. You can also hold the Control key while dragging a boundary to split a model space viewport. Model space viewports can be joined or removed by dragging a boundary to the edge.
For those of you that use multiple products, you might notice a couple of those feel like a lot like using Revit, actually, with the icon and with the previewing and the way that some of the commands actually work. Geographic locations next. Again, ideally everything is positioned where it's supposed to be in the world, and they've pushed that from civil and map all the way down into the CAD products now.
Geographic location functionality is significantly streamlined and enhanced in AutoCAD 2015. You can set the geographic location from a map using the Set Location tool on the Insert ribbon tab. You must be signed into your Autodesk 360 account to access online map data. If you're not signed into Autodesk 360 or you choose not to use online map data, you can still use the Geographic Location tool to enter latitude and longitude for the location. A new Use Maps button is added at the center of the display in case you change your mind. When using online map data, the Geographic Location tool has been streamlined to help guide you through the process of specifying a geographic location. The first page of the Geographic Location tool enables you to specify a location and place a marker. You can specify a location by entering an address or zooming in the map tile. Right-click to drop the marker in the map or click on Drop Marker Here from the locations listed. You can move the marker as often as needed with no impact on performance. When you're satisfied with the location, the Next button leads you to the second page where you specify the coordinate system. Based on the marker location, AutoCAD 2015 lists only relevant coordinate systems. You can use the search field to further filter the relevant coordinate systems, selecting the most appropriate one. After picking the corresponding geographic location within the drawing, updated prompts for specifying the north direction are easier to understand and more flexible. The same updated prompts make it easier to reorient the marker after it's been placed. When displaying an aerial map, the image resolution increases or decreases as you zoom in or out, assuming higher resolution data is available. One of the most exciting enhancements to geographic location functionality is the ability to capture and plot map data. New tools on the Geolocation ribbon tab enable you to capture an area or viewport for plotting purposes and to preserve the current map data. The map that you capture is embedded into the drawing so that when you turn off online map data or have no internet access, you can still view and plot the specified map area. If you change the online map display, for example from aerial to road, the embedded map image remains static. You can select the embedded map image and use grips to move, resize, and even rotate the image boundary. When you change the image boundary, AutoCAD automatically requeries the online map data and updates the image accordingly. A contextual map image ribbon tab displays additional relevant tools when a map image is selected. Use these tools to choose from aerial, road, or hybrid representations of the map. The Map Image Resolution tool enables you to update the map image object by retrieving a higher or lower resolution image from the map service provider. It's important to keep in mind that the highest resolution satellite images aren't necessarily the most recent. Slider bars on the Map Image ribbon tab enable you to adjust the brightness, contrast, and fading of the map image so that you can more easily see relevant AutoCAD geometry. To avoid inadvertently changing the map data, the map image does not automatically update from the map service provider when you open the drawing. The map image is only updated when you move, scale, or edit the boundary of the map image, or when you use the Reload Image tool. With the ability to capture maps, you can now include this valuable map data when printing.
So the part I like about this one, for people that deal with GIS information all the time, they're familiar with coordinate systems and how that stuff works, but if you're doing architecture, for example, and you're just trying to plot a building down on a site plan, it takes a lot of that out of the mix for you. It allows you to just basically have a location and a rotation to be able to set that thing orientated on its site and be able to leverage imagery and other things that you either have no access to or have a really difficult time modifying to fit your need when you use that kind of stuff. Next, we're going to go into a little bit of annotation and drafting sort of enhancements.
The Mtext editor is updated in AutoCAD 2015 to offer better visibility and control. The background is now transparent when hardware acceleration is enabled, so you can see drawing geometry even when the editor opens on top of it. A corner resizer offers more obvious and intuitive resizing of columns, allowing you to adjust both the height and width at the same time. If you pass the cursor over the bottom or right edges of the text editor, you can change either the height or width individually. When you enter text in the Mtext editor, AutoCAD recognizes if caps lock is turned on while you're also pressing the Shift key. When you press Enter or Spacebar after typing the first word, AutoCAD automatically corrects the text and turns off caps lock so that you can continue typing without interruption. Creating bullets and numbering is simplified in AutoCAD 2015. A new control on the Text Editor ribbon tab enables auto bullets and numbering. When you begin a line with a symbol or with a number or letter followed by a special character, such as a period or parentheses, AutoCAD automatically creates a bullet or numbered list. An icon indicates that automatic bullets or numbering has started. You can click on the icon to access relevant controls, including an option to remove bullets or numbering. Auto-stacking of fractions is also simplified in AutoCAD 2015. When you enter numbers with a /, for example 1/2, AutoCAD automatically treats it as a stacked fraction and displays an icon similar to the one for auto bullets and numbering. You can click on the icon to access relevant controls for that stacked fraction. For example, you can change between diagonal and horizontal stacking, unstack the characters, or access the stack properties. The stack properties enable you to further change the appearance and behavior of stacked fractions. You can specify whether the value displays as a fraction, tolerance, or decimal, as well as its position and text size relative to the other text. Tooltips have been added to the tab tool and markers in the text editor to assist you in creating and editing paragraph tabs. A new Modify button in the Paragraph dialog box enables you to easily modify the values of existing tabs. A Match Properties tool has been added to the Text Editor ribbon tab and toolbar, enabling you to apply properties between selected text within an Mtext object. Another handy enhancement to the text editing ribbon is the Subscript and Superscript tools. Now you can simply highlight characters in the text editor and turn superscript or subscript on and off. This and many of the Mtext enhancements are available for other objects that use the text editor, such as tables, leaders, and dimensions. The new Text Aligned command enables you to quickly align single and multi-text as well as attribute text by selecting the text objects to align and then picking the text you want them to align with, or selecting points to manually define the alignment line. You can also choose from a variety of spacing options, including the ability to distribute them evenly, set a spacing value, maintain the current vertical spacing, or maintain the current horizontal spacing. AutoCAD 2015 offers more intelligent behavior when creating dimensions. When you place dimensions, object snaps for existing dimension extension lines are ignored to prevent them from being inadvertently picked while attempting to snap to nearby geometry. You can control object snap behavior for dimension extension lines with a new option on the Drafting tab of the Options dialog box. When you create dimensions, AutoCAD uses the current dimension style and places them on the current layer. That gives you plenty of flexibility for controlling the display and visibility of dimensions. When you create continuous or baseline dimensions, however, it's likely you'll want the new dimensions to use the same dimension style and layer as the original dimension, regardless of the current layer or dimension style. In AutoCAD 2015, continuous and baseline dimensions do just that, thanks to the enhanced Dim Continue Mode system variable. You can now fillet polyline arc segments, and you can press the Control key while creating a polyline arc to draw it in the opposite direction. A new tool on the status bar provides one-click access to set an isometric drafting environment. Click the icon to turn isometric drafting on and off, or use the flyout menu to set the isometric drafting plane to top, left, or right.
The fillet of the polyline arcs got a couple people's attention.
Yeah.
That was nice. All right, back to a little bit of 3D stuff here.
When using AutoCAD to design in 3D, one of the most valuable and necessary tools is 3D Orbit. In AutoCAD 2015, 3D Orbit is enhanced to offer better control over the target point of the orbit. A new variable, Orbit Auto Target, is set to 1 for traditional orbit behavior. Sometimes, however, when you're trying to orbit around a particular area of your model, you may find that it orbits right off the screen. This is because the default pivot point isn't near the objects you're trying to view. Now you can set Orbit Auto Target to 0, allowing 3D Orbit to snap to a point nearest the cursor, making it the pivot point of the orbit. The pivot point is clearly indicated by a small spherical icon.
Yeah, that's nice to have it take you off into outer space somewhere. I think if you're in orbit as well, yeah, there's a little right click to get to it, if you guys want to get to it that way as well. All right, this has to do with reality capture, which is a lot to do with point clouds, some other stuff as well, but primarily handling large sets of information from a mesh, from pictures, or from a laser scanner or something like that.
Support for reality capture is significantly enhanced in AutoCAD 2015 to provide better performance and more flexibility when working with point cloud files. You can now launch Autodesk Recap, which is included with the AutoCAD 2015 install, directly from the AutoCAD ribbon. With Autodesk Recap, you can index 3D scans and create and edit point cloud project files. Those point cloud project and scan files can then be attached to AutoCAD drawings. If both the drawing and the point cloud files include geographic location, you can use it to accurately insert the point cloud into the drawing. The options for entering insertion point, scale, and rotation are disabled because AutoCAD is relying on true geographic data to position the point cloud relative to drawing geometry. After attaching a point cloud file, you can select it to access the point cloud contextual ribbon, which includes several valuable updates. New colorization options have been added to help you visualize the point cloud in more ways. You can now visualize point cloud data based on elevation or classification, in addition to scan colors, object color, normal, and intensity, if the data exists in the point cloud. The former Point Cloud Intensity Color Mapping dialog box is replaced with a new Point Cloud Color Map dialog to support these new visualization options. In it, you can select the appropriate tab to customize the colorization based on intensity, elevation, or classification. You can select from predefined color schemes or create and save your own. When colorizing the point cloud by elevation, you can specify the minimum and maximum elevation values and the interval height. Colorization is just one of the many enhancements to point cloud functionality in AutoCAD 2015. A new Point Cloud Manager makes it easier than ever to work with multiple point clouds. The Point Cloud Manager lists all the point cloud scans that are attached to the current drawing. If those point clouds include regions defined in Autodesk Recap, the regions are also listed in the Point Cloud Manager. You can click on the icon to the right of each scan to turn it on or off, and easily turn all of the scans on or off with the icon next to the scan's heading. Double-click on a point cloud scan in the list to view the model from its scan position. You can use tools such as 3D Walk, Orbit, and steering wheels to navigate around the model from there. Similarly, you can turn regions on or off to more easily view specific areas of the point cloud. If you turn off unassigned points, you'll see only the points that are represented by regions. To focus on the woodshop, for example, you can turn off all the unassigned points and the regions you're not interested in. Previous point cloud clipping tools are replaced with more intuitive and flexible cropping tools. In AutoCAD 2015, the cropping boundary is always normal to the screen, so you can easily specify the cropping boundary from the most intuitive viewpoint. Choose from rectangular, polygonal, or circular boundary shapes. You can choose to display the inside or outside of the crop boundary. Regardless of which option you choose when creating the boundary, you can use the Invert tool to easily change it. After specifying an appropriate cropping boundary from one view, such as the top, you can change to another view, like the front, to intuitively specify the cropping boundary for the height. You can continue to change views and create cropping boundaries to focus on just the area of the point cloud that you need. The maximum points displayed on screen has increased in AutoCAD 2015 from 10 million to 25 million. The level of detail slider sets the density for all point clouds in the drawing and is relative to the maximum points specified in the Options dialog box. Even with fewer points displayed, you can still see a nice representation of the drawing by increasing the point size. For example, if your point cloud file is sparse on points, you can increase the point size to visually fill in the gaps. New lighting tools on the visualization panel enable you to view point clouds with various lighting and shading effects. But point clouds in AutoCAD aren't just for looking at. AutoCAD 2015 offers new point cloud object snaps that make it easier than ever to snap to point cloud geometry, so that you can expand on the existing design for retrofits and renovations. New point cloud object snaps are accessible from the 3D Object Snap tab of the Drafting Settings dialog box. For easier access to point cloud object snaps, you can customize the status bar to display the 3D Object Snap tool. AutoCAD can detect a set of planar point cloud points, enabling you to align the UCS to them. You can insert blocks or draw new AutoCAD geometry by snapping to point cloud nodes or planes. In this example, I used the point cloud to insert and create 3D geometry, but the value of point clouds isn't limited to 3D. For example, using the cropping tool, you can create a thin slice of the point cloud that represents a 2D elevation or plan of the existing walls. Then, using AutoCAD's annotation and drawing tools, you can create accurate dimensions and geometry by snapping to points in the point cloud, helping get your new design off to a quick start.
I'm starting to see more and more of them in town. I was working with a client earlier this week, and it was all together. So the way they were given the file, it was one big scan. It was like 10 gigabytes of just scan data. It was probably shot from 30 different points inside and outside of a structure. But to be able to take that thing and align it with a survey inside of Civil 3D and to be able to do some of that orbiting and have it perform really well was a huge advantage for those guys to deal with it. And to be able to snap to the point cloud, to actually be able to tie that point to a specific shot, really helped out. So this is a collaboration effort between the 360 service that I talked about and sharing drawings.
The Design Feed palette provides a way of adding messages and images to a drawing, which you can view and share internally or online through Autodesk 360. The Design Feed posts are available in the drawing whether you access them on the desktop, the web, or with a mobile device. You can create a simple text post and, if you'd like, you can associate it with an area or point in the drawing to visually identify relevant information. You can just as easily include images in your posts. The Design Feed data and associated images are saved to Autodesk 360 where they can be seen by anyone that has been authorized to view the drawing. You can specifically tag people in the post so they receive an email notification. When a viewer clicks on a post in Design Feed, the associated area or point is indicated in the drawing and a bubble displays the corresponding text. Viewers can create new posts or reply to existing ones. When a post and its replies are no longer needed, you can resolve the thread to hide it in the Design Feed palette. You can even delete it completely. Whether you store your drawings locally, on a network server, or on Autodesk 360, the associated Design Feed posts are stored on Autodesk 360. Anyone with an Autodesk 360 account and permission to access the drawings can see the Design Feed posts. If you save a local or network drawing under another file name, you can choose to copy the Design Feed comments as well. If you create a copy of the drawing using eTransmit, Archive, or DWG Convert, you can specify whether Design Feed data is removed from the drawing. By default, the option to remove Design Feed data is enabled.
Other things that they didn't cover that I thought might make some sense to interject here real quick. So they've added some more flexibility in terms of getting different types of data in and out. So they have this new thing called the Autodesk Translation Framework, and it allows you to import model data from different manufacturer file types. So you got your SolidWorks on here, your Pro E, DGN, STEP files, CATIA, and some others. Inventor. So if you get models from other people, you don't have those software packages, this thing should bring across models with better mesh control, with better layer and object understanding than maybe historically when you've tried to translate some data back and forth. So you can find that under the Insert tab by that point cloud stuff we were talking about. One of the things about these suites, right, is if you decided, let's say you wanted to uninstall your 2013 suite or your 2014 suite, all of a sudden now you've got maybe 20, 25 different modules on your computer of all these various pieces and parts. So now they actually, through the Start menu, you can get to an uninstall the suite. So they released that with 2014. It's also available with 2015. So there it shows that I installed an Ultimate Suite. It shows me all the pieces and parts that are in that Ultimate Suite, and it gives me an opportunity to basically just walk away and run an unassisted install. Then you don't have to worry about anymore, should I take this piece off first or should I take that piece off first, and all the kind of guesswork that we used to do in earlier versions. So also, most of your products now have a BIM 360 tab built into them, and so If you're familiar with the concept of Navisworks, where you bring a bunch of different types of models together and you clash them and you coordinate them, Glue is sort of a similar product. It gives you some of what Navisworks does, but more in a browser-based, cloud-based application. So one of the hardest parts of Navisworks is if I'm the person that's going to do the coordination, every Tuesday I have to orchestrate this thing where everybody uploads their models, then I have to go download everybody's models, and then I can do all the coordination before the meeting. With Glue, everybody's models kind of go up to the cloud, and so you're able to eliminate some of that manual up and manual down process. Also, even if you're trying to work more tightly across different offices, maybe different disciplines, this idea that every time you save the model locally, you can hit Glue, and it takes that and it appends it up to the cloud. Now all of a sudden I'm working across offices without having to deal with much of the back and forth. So now we're getting daily updates, we're getting multiple day updates, as opposed to every week I get your update and then I got to change a bunch of my stuff. You'll notice a new thing called the Application Manager. So because you have these suites and you have all these moving parts, very similar to what Windows Update does, this Autodesk Application Manager wants to install when you install your suite. It wants to sit down there in your application, in your tray, and it wants to continually check Autodesk. So I was mentioning to a couple of the guys earlier that even though the 2015 products might be fairly new to you, they've already released a number of updates for some of those core products. So a great way to have this thing pop up and say, hey, there's a new update. Great way to have it just click on it, have it update, go ahead and install itself. You'll see those things through the system tray as more of a cohesive solution, as opposed to having to be in a particular product, using it to understand that there's an update. So they kind of start off with what they call platform changes, things that are more architecturally oriented. So one of the things architects like to do, if you haven't noticed, is this whole sketchy line concept. So you've got some controls inside of Revit to do this with your views now, to give you that sort of hand-drawn effect. You can see some other ways that you can color floor plans and sort of get some of that artistry rendering sort of set up as well through what they call visualization tools. Another thing they wanted to enhance for the 2015 release was some documentation capabilities. So in here you've got enhanced schedules. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to talk about that one. Views and view references is something you guys probably have to deal with a lot, but I think enhanced schedules is probably the one that's going to be kind of the key for everybody here. Images in the schedules, so that's might be the first thing that you might notice for your families, to be able to create images of those things. And so you can specify the image over here in properties at the family level if you want. If you have ones like wall types that actually are based on type, you can do the image at the type level instead of the family level, if that's appropriate for that particular scenario for you. I think they're going to take us into the family, and they're going to show you where you can build it in to the family, and then you can load the family back into your project. In this case, furniture is a great example. I'm sure there's lots of other scenarios where you might use it as well. And then we're going to create a schedule just to show that we can pick up that parameter as one of our columns. And we can do some stuff with the graphics like resizing. You'll see the images right there. In this case, you're going to pull type image. And then once you add it to the sheet, that's when you should actually see the images come in. resize your images from the ribbon. And then a little bit of it happens with the actual control of the cells.
That's a really cool one.
So any questions on that one? Is that something you guys might use?
Yeah,
A little bit?
absolutely.
Other documentation tools, assembly codes. IFC is an interesting one, so you can now import. So there's a better import tool, but the part I like about the IFC is you can also attach an IFC as a link. So I've had some scenarios where I've had to go back with some other manufacturers back and forth, like somebody who was using AutoCAD, for example. And so IFC became a way to get that architectural model out of AutoCAD and get it over to Revit. But the export, depending on which version of AutoCAD they're running, sometimes can be a very, very large IFC file. It was really bogging down my model. And so one of the things you can do with your links, again, you've been linking Revit files in or CAD files in for a while, point clouds, but now you could link in somebody's IFC file. So if that's something that you run into, know that you can go ahead and accept those as well. And IFC is one of those sort of industry standard formats where they try and create something third party, and then they try and get all the vendors that make software to kind of come to some standardization, some agreement, so that you as the client don't get held hostage by the data being trapped in a particular way and having a particular piece of software. Having walls understand the model of a wall should kind of translate across different platforms of gear and equipment and other sorts of software packages and things like that. Yeah? All right, let's take a quick look at the keynoting enhancements. So a simplification of keynoting revision dialog to a single path. So you just saw that kind of go across the screen to get your table reloaded. So sometimes you have issues with breaking the link to the keynoting database. And so they've also got this warning symbol now that lets you know if you're having a problem connecting to that source for and then allows you to go ahead and browse and kind of correct that. And then they're going in and placing a couple of keynote tags from that particular file. So again, as projects move around, as you make changes to those things, it can be difficult to have the keynoting keep up with you. But in this scenario, it works kind of nice to have the keynotes. Hidden lines. So for a little bit now, you've been able to do some hidden lines, show your hidden lines in different 3D views for structural stuff, for MEP stuff. It becomes nice to do that. Now you can do it sort of automatically for everything in the view, as opposed to having to override a particular display of items to do that. So just real quickly, we can take a look at that. So again, here they first start off by showing you kind of how you can turn the hidden lines on for certain objects in a 3D view, if you want to show those lines underneath. And then they'll actually show you the setting on the view now that allows you to kind of turn that on in more of a global, sort of all-encompassing fashion. You can do it even if the discipline of the view is set to something different than what you might be working in. So you can control it by discipline, you can control it for everything. You can do it in a 3D view, you can do it in a 2D view, and it keeps you from having to do a bunch of override scenarios. Revisions. Does anybody use revisions in Revit now? So now they've added some capability of deleting a revision, which is kind of nice. They've also added some more capability, kind of like coming across from AutoCAD in terms of creating those shapes and creating those sketch tools and creating those links to control some of that stuff a little bit better. So let's look at the one on revisions.
An entire project revision can now be deleted under the Sheets Issued Revisions dialog. Before the revision is deleted, you will be warned that all associated clouds and tags will be deleted. The last revision in a project cannot be deleted. Deleting a revision removes associated clouds and tags from every view and sheet. A revision cannot be deleted if a revision cloud sketch is being edited. Issued revisions cannot be deleted either. This improves control over the changes in your project documentation.
We talked earlier about the IFC, linking those things in, not having that overhead, not having to deal with as much conversion of data problems, having a better way to deal with that different types of geometry. Other link information, again, you've got CAD files, you've got Revit files, you've got point clouds that you can link to. Reload from is the little button in the dialog box if you had to repath some of those things, if they get broken over moving the file around or transmitting the file to somebody. Pinned elements can be controlled from inside the environment now, so if I actually take you over to Revit, it's hard to see at my resolution. Down here in the lower right-hand corner, there are more icons now for allowing it, whether or not it selects links and whether or not it selects pinned items. So if you have a reference in there and you pin it, as you're making modifications to objects on top of it, it keeps you from selecting that big reference. And it gets it out of your way. And it makes a lot of help doing that. Again, I do it with links a lot, but you can do it with individual objects as well. So you just want to get underneath the modify, which again is tough at this resolution, but you can go ahead and pin those objects. And then if you pin those objects, you can pin and unpin them here, and then if you set it such that you don't select pinned objects, it keeps those things out of the way. You have to unpin them before you can delete them, and so you get that expanded warning now. You can also delete non-graphic things like schedules, and so this just gives you more control over those pinned items. Family parameter order. So if you're into making your own families, if you're into making your own parameters, they've now got these little options to move up and down those various fields inside of the dialog box there, so that you can take a look at those. This has been something that I guess has been on sort of the wish list from users for a while. Let's see if this one plays back a little bit better. So here they are editing the family for this particular light. Sorting order, you can go ahead and change that underneath a particular heading, and then you can use specific, up and down operations within those particular categories. Load it back into the project, and then you change out the parameters, then you'll see those things reflected when you pick on a particular instance of that family. Tooltips. So you can create your own tooltips now for your family parameters, so that as you hover over those families, you can surface that information up to 250 characters. So if there's a specific way you want to have that family used, or there's some key information, you can go ahead and include that. Tag improvements, so some consistency for the leaders, and then an elevation at top as a new parameter for elevation tags. structural engineers. We did talk a little bit about Revit structural stuff. So again, in Revit structure, you can have both the drafting side of it and the analytical side of it. So you can control the visibility of all the analytics as you go back and forth between the analytic model that Autodesk has, which is called Robot, or some of the industry ones that people are used to using, STAD and RISA and all those things have extensions to make that data go back and forth. Parts is a way that's existed in Revit for the last couple of years to basically break elements down into more tangible pieces and parts. So rebar inside of these slabs, for instance, is one example of that. And so, so hosting rebar inside of this gives you more of an opportunity to take the design and then transition towards a fabrication scenario. And then along with that reinforcement comes the opportunity to do scheduling and sequencing and annotation, and to start, I know a couple of you mentioned shop drawings, whatever we can do to sort of assist in heading that direction as we generate the models into shop drawings. Again, more structural examples for reinforcement and for rebar. And then they continue to make it more easy to access, annotating and grouping and sorting the various pieces of rebar into industry standard sort of notation. One of the things they've done with Revit structure, I think, that makes it a lot easier to, when you're trying to match up these members, is snapping and adjusting setbacks. And so what you tend to, if you've tried to do a model of a structure, you tend to have a lot of problems when you're trying to tie this beam into, here, tie into the beam or tie into the column. And so they've created a lot more auto join and abilities to control where you're snapping to. It makes this stuff work a lot easier in a 3D model, not just looking at it from a 2D plan. They've added more catalog information, so you have more profiles to support the different types of members that you would use. And when you use these models to quantify, which is the next step that some folks are going, it allows you to do that more easily. Now for the MEP folks in the room, there were some enhancements in Revit as well. One of them had to do with calculation methods. So adding additional capabilities for determining pressure drop for different types of duct and pipe. And so having some information to look at for those particular equations. Also in the mechanical space, having to deal with tagging values along those ducts. So you can see examples before and after tees to show those different drops in CFM and things like that. When you look at the electrical, they've got some different properties, and they've added some other stuff to the API. And then they've also added, again, in the engineering space, more content, both domestically and internationally, for that kind of stuff. We showed how earlier CAD was kind of stealing some things from Revit. Here's one I would say where Revit's stealing some stuff from CAD. The ability to sort of double click in and out of the viewports. So to activate a view on a sheet and then to deactivate a view on a sheet, more like what you're used to inside of CAD, even when you have multiple viewports on a sheet, just that ease of use, because again, most of you use multiple products, and to the extent that we can marry these products up so that the behavior is the same, I think it makes it easier for you. So here's a couple of examples of getting inside of that viewport, everything else grayed out, and then double clicking outside on the sheet to kind of get you out. So for those folks that have been doing that in CAD for a long time, I think you'll appreciate that. While I'm in Revit, I might as well talk just a little bit about point layout. So one of the technologies that Autodesk bought recently is called Autodesk Point Layout. And what it's really intended to do is to bring the field and the model together through the use of a robotic total station. You see a lot of interaction between getting data in and out of the field on the infrastructure side. On the civil side, we've been doing it for a long time with total stations and GPS and things like that to lay out the ground, but it doesn't tend to be used as much in the layout of the building or the as-builting of the building. And so I'll just play a quick video here on kind of the overview of point layout, and then I'll take you into
Traditional field layout using a tape measure, printed drawings, and field books is a slow, tedious, and error-prone process. Now that many buildings are designed with a building information modeling process, why not leverage this information to make layout easier in the field? Well, now you can with Autodesk Point Layout. This breakthrough method improves office-to-field efficiency, reduces errors, and speeds up your field productivity. Autodesk Point Layout is innovative software for the construction layout process. Point Layout integrates with Autodesk AutoCAD, Autodesk Navisworks, and Autodesk Revit software to automatically create points and transfer them to the robotic total station. Field layout is much faster, easier, and accurate compared to the traditional paper and tape measure methods. BIM data from the model and the total station can be imported and exported to capture as-built conditions. By sending data to and from the field, Point Layout not only helps to improve the speed and accuracy of installation, it also captures installed positions for quality control and assurance. Complete layout with more accuracy and less man-hours, helping to save time and money. Point Layout can also help reduce crew size and time on site, resulting in improved project safety. Point Layout effectively bridges the gap between CAD or BIM and the field to streamline and accelerate the entire BIM design to field construction workflow. Build projects faster, more accurately, on time, and on budget with Autodesk Point Layout.
So you'll notice that I've got the point layout module loaded up inside of Revit. And so what you can do, let's turn to a 3D view for example, you've got the opportunity to create points off of a lot of different features. So probably the first way that you might use it is, again, you've got a 3D BIM model already, and you want to go ahead and turn these points into something that they can take out into the field. And so if you're doing fixtures, there's going to be a point on every single fixture that you want. If you're doing pipe runs, there's going to be a bend, or there's going to be a location along that. If you're laying out slabs or walls, you can have an opportunity to create points on those floors, on those walls. And so you can see a number of different ways that you can do it. Control points, so you may want to set yourself up with a couple of grid lines meet and say that's where we're going to start from, and then everything's going to be based off of this particular coordinate system. It helps you when you're importing and exporting the points to kind of bridge the gap between maybe an architectural feet inches world and a decimal feet sort of surveying world. And so you can manage the points in here, you can create the points in here. You can do some stuff coming back the other direction, so you could go shoot the built environment and then use it to bring those things back into the models, and you can use that to kind of compare where you intended to be and where you actually ended up. And so I think that's kind of the way most folks are using it. So I don't know, if you do something like a conduit or something like that, just lay out some conduit, choose an elevation that you're going to want to work at, that's fine. Go ahead into 3D so you can see it. So imagine you've got these complicated runs and you're trying to figure out where your penetrations are going to be, and so you can actually lay those things out. You're going to be able to come in here, you're going to be able to generate points from these different types of intelligent objects. You can do a couple different selection methods. You can choose which sort of conduit you want to lay out. You can choose where along the run or just at the bends that you actually want to do, and then you can choose any sort of description that you want it to pull through. Let's say parameter. Let's add the diameter, sure. And then inside the product here, you can see we've got these little 3D points. And so if we look up here, we should have a couple of points that it shows us. So it automatically decided there's a standard that you can set in the system. for stakeout points to be at 1,000, and for plumbing points to be at 5,000, and electrical stuff to be at 7,000, so you can sort of stratify that stuff. And then the next goal would be to sort of export that into an XYZ that's going to make sense for the grid, that's going to have the correct coordinate system, and if you're using a real-world coordinate system, to actually be able to pick up on that stuff and to dump it into something that would look like this, that can be loaded in pretty much any type of gear. But these are, instead of feet and inches, it's in decimal feet. It's based off of a 0, 0. It's got a Z elevation into it. It's got some intelligent description built into it. And so now you can go out, you can set on the deck, and then you can start to lay these points out. Here's another little quick video on some of the customers that are already using point layout and some of the things that they're sort of finding from using it.
It's just so essential to be efficient, and you can't be any more efficient than working out all the details and issues before sending that information off to the field for installation.
Well, there was a lot of issues typically in construction with strings, tape measures, the old way of doing things. Conduits stubbing up through the concrete floor that weren't hitting the walls, and just a lot of cost and rework.
Three most important things I would say are coordination, coordination, and coordination.
Autodesk Point Layout is a software that allows us to affix a point within an object in a three-dimensional model, export that out to a total station, and use that in the field to actually lay out a specific point.
The idea behind it is to virtually build the project in the computer before we get guys on site.
I'm able to take all the information and all the coordination that we do within these models and take it out to the field by using survey coordinates. So our field engineers are actually laying out what we coordinated within the model.
Grid lines get put in the right spot, the walls get put in the right spot, the pipe penetrations get put in the right spot, electrical, everything just goes together seamlessly.
We'll create points where everything penetrates concrete, where there's duct shaft openings, hanger locations.
My favorite feature of the Autodesk Point Layout software is the automated layout. I'll isolate a specific type of point that I want to lay out, push the button, and it'll put down a point and a number for each one of those.
We were able to place points using Autodesk Point Layout software directly on families, even parametric families. We don't ever have to go back and update the locations of those points because they travel with the family.
You can select different wall types. You can select the middle of the wall, the exterior of the wall, the track, the finish, the top, bottom. It's seamless, it's fast. It gets you right out into the field.
Our layout person doesn't even have to be in the same state. We'll just email it to him and he'll load it in his data collector, level up the robot, and you hit a couple of control points that everybody on the job is using, so we're all building off of the same solid control points, and boom, you're ready to go. Just takes minutes.
We can set that total station up in a safe location and instruct our crews to lay out the points that are in safe areas to work. If we don't get all the points, the field is able to add points using Autodesk Navisworks Manage, which I am unaware of any other software application that allows that. They send that information back to us, we load that information back into our Revit model, and we know the new location of the item so we can easily as-built the model to the location that the field placed it.
So the drawing we give them is what the owner gets. Those are their as-builts.
Not only being able to extract the points from Revit, but also using it in an AutoCAD format. So that way, any 3D files that we get from a plumber or electrician in the CAD pipe or any CAD format, we are able to extract the points and export them in the survey coordinates.
When we pre-coordinate and then we fabricate off of those drawings that we just made, there's a lot less waste.
You could be building prefabricated bathrooms, while they're scratching dirt.
You can accurately lay out and you can know that you are doing your job correctly. That alleviates so much risk on a project that people really want to use this software.
We went from 30% of your sleeves being in the wrong spot to installing over 11,000 sleeves and only missing maybe 1 or 2.
As the technology increases, the companies that are using it are going to become more productive, which lowers the cost at bid time, which is going to force a lot of the guys that aren't using the technology out.
You are able to produce your work more accurately and efficiently with this program, which will save you money.
If you're building a hospital or a stadium or an office building or a grocery store or something, I don't know how you would do it without it.
It's awesome. I don't know how else to say it. You know, if you're not using Autodesk point layout software, you're missing the boat.
Third thing in there, which was that as-built-in component. So now I can go ahead and update my design files to reflect exactly the information that came in from the field, which is that third component. So I can take it out there, I can QA/QC back and forth, and then I can as-built off of what we would consider the real-world points. Well, let's talk about Navisworks while we're there, because I think that's, whether you're on the civil side or whether you're on the building side, it's appropriate to. So again, Navisworks got a couple of primary benefits, right? One of those is bringing together a bunch of different types of models, manufacturing-based models, Autodesk models, non-Autodesk models, the civil model with the structural model, the fire protection model into the building, even if they use this third-party add-on software package. So that's where we bring everything together. And then, like the guy said, coordinate, 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 right? So that's what many of you do. And then once you've brought all those together, then you can do a couple different things. You can navigate the model and visually inspect it to determine if anything's not going to work. You can do some quantification. So there are some enhancements that we're going to talk about around quantification. So can you do a takeoff on those model elements? The answer is yes. Also, the product is known for coordination, or what they call clash detection. That's a big reason people use Navisworks. And then something in between that gets some mileage is sort of the logistics or the simulation, putting your model to time and understanding what it's going to look like as it builds, checking that model against what it looks like out in the field. So here's some of the areas that they touched on in the Navisworks family of products. Again, stuff around quantification and takeoff, stuff around rendering, and then enhancements around improved performance. So Navisworks just sort of took on quantification over the last couple of years. It was in another Autodesk product. That product did 2D and 3D. When they first introduced it in Navisworks, you could pretty much just do a 3D quantification. And now again, they've introduced 2D. So they realize it's sort of a hybrid approach. You got to look at those sheets. In this case, they're digital sheets. They'd be DWF files. And then you've got to have a 3D model to reference those against. And you want to have sort of that single truth that takes information from both of those places and allows you to count items, establish costs, whether those be material costs, labor costs that are going to affect your timeline. So if you're looking at a wall, do you want to count linear feet of that wall? Do you want to do some sort of calculation based on the volume of that slab, the square footage of that slab? All of that information is available because at the core of BIM is this idea of information and all this metadata, all these parameters that you can build into Revit. Now you can transition that stuff over so that your pre-con folks have yet another way to check that they're feeling good about a number. So here's some of the things you can do in the 2D world, things that you would do traditionally with an on-screen takeoff or one of those other types of tools where you're trying to look at areas and quantify objects and those do linear takeoffs. Those are sort of the primary ones that people use. And then you get into the 3D takeoff world. And in the 3D takeoff world, you've already got this whole tree of items that's coming across from Revit. You've already got the walls in a bucket. You've already got, and they're all categorized by the type of wall that they are. And so taking your cost structure, how you like to division it out for the 01s and the 02s and the 03s, and getting those building elements into those appropriate buckets, and then getting them costs and mapping those properties so that you can tap into a length or a volume or whatever that metric is going to be for you that's going to have a cost associated with it. and managing that workbook. Got additional material support inside of Navisworks now, so again we can do rendering, very comparable now to what you might see in CAD or in Revit, to have the consistency of those materials coming across from one of those file formats where those may have already been assigned, like a Revit file or a drawing file. And then we're taking now advantage of all your processors when we're doing some operations inside of Navisworks, and allow you to set up more photorealistic information as you're showing people around the project. Also the ability to cloud render. So to take the Autodesk 360 service that already works in CAD, that already works in Revit, and extend that into Navisworks, just to give you better visualizations, more control, things like that. Also, recap. Again, you've seen across the platform, CAD, Revit, Navis is no exception, handling more points, being able to adjust the point size as you zoom in, as you work with these models. You can see a lot more intricate information inside of those models, leveraging that sort of recap platform so that once you create that recap project off of the scan data, it's indexed and it's ready to go, and it can work with any of those projects. Some other productivity enhancements around Navisworks 2015, getting obscure objects out of the way of your cameras can help. You know, this would be an example if you're bringing in like a curved element and you want to have some faceting, you can go ahead and have some adjustment over that inside of options now, and then being able to add arrows to your markup, which seems like a small thing, but has been something that people have been wanting to see for a little bit. So. All right, so let's talk Civil 3D real quick. All right, so Civil 3D, again, it's the civil engineering platform for Autodesk. It starts with points and surfaces. It then transitions from there, if you're doing residential stuff, into things like parcels and grading. If you're doing roadway-oriented activities, it's going to be how you manage and create alignments, profiles, what they call corridors, which is a 3D model of the entire roadway. It includes assemblies, which is sort of that typical cross-section of what the guts of the road are made up of, so that you could quantify that, so you could set various levels of surface underneath that for red tops and blue tops. It allows you to facilitate things like machine control. And so in 2015, these are some of the areas that they decided to go ahead and focus on, a lot geared towards transportation, as Autodesk has made a lot of strides in California and sort of becoming on equal footing with Caltrans with respect to Civil 3D versus MicroStation, right? And so we're not seeing that really trickle down to the Nevada market yet, but I think hopefully in due time. So some of the stuff that you might have seen in the AutoCAD presentation as we start to look at some of these things. So again, we have those AutoCAD based enhancements. We talked about geographic location earlier. We talked about the lasso, which is very like Adobe graphics oriented there in the middle. We talked about the darker user interface, the changes in the lower right hand corner, things like galleries, things like layout tabs, that new starting screen. These are all things that you leverage inside of CAD that make their way into Civil 3D, the trim, the extend, match properties, and then that point cloud engine, that ability to see better information, to handle more points at one time. That stuff is all available to us. So let's take a look at this one. So this has to do with the feedback. So there's your lasso stuff for selecting objects. That one takes a little bit of getting used to. But previewing stuff before it actually happens. So selection previewing has been around for a while, but now you have this new concept of command previewing. Again, no matter what flavor of CAD you use, things like trim and extend, text commands, these are things you use all the time. Break's another one. You like to break stuff. More ways than one. They've got their line weights turned on in here. I don't know how much of that you like. I'm drawing with a crayon. And then here's another example of a point cloud. This one is the outside of a Marriott somewhere in the world, I'm not quite sure, but and I think so often people get caught up in 3D, and so yeah, it's great to have the 3D information. It's great to be able to orbit, easily with that little new grip that we were talking about earlier, the target, but also how they were able to crop the point cloud and just take a slice, whether that be a sectional slice or whether that be a plan slice, and then be able to use that to create effective 2D geometry for these various facilities that you guys are caring for. All right, so then you get past some of the user interface stuff, and then you get more into the engineering aspects of it. And so when you're working on roadway designs, you're doing a lot of corridor modeling. Those corridors are made up of assemblies and sub-assemblies. Being able to create your own sub-assemblies, being able to have voided areas inside of those sub-assemblies is things that people have been waiting on for a while. Being able to do more with the layout, both in a plan perspective and a profile perspective, as you're laying out these different roadway scenarios for turnouts and all the other kinds of things that we run into. So first we'll talk about like the corridor. So what you want to do is you don't care so much about the frequency in these sort of straightforward areas, but you do care about the frequency in those areas where you've got changing shoulders and geometry and stuff like that. So this allows you to have it basically monitor the distance along those curves and create points where appropriate, and you'll see it add a bunch of additional slices for me to tighten that up so when they go to survey it, it works better. And then you want some real-time adjustment so to be able to adjust those target lines more easily on the perimeter, and then have your corridor, your 3D model, effectively update. That's going to drive your quantities, it's going to drive your sheets and everything. Here's more of an example of adjusting stuff in the horizontal. We've had issues in the past where the profile didn't sort of stick with the horizontal alignment adjustments, and so now you've got a better way to match that stuff up. You've got lots of different options in the software for making changes to the way the profile looks. And so you can control that profile locking now. So now when that's turned off, you can see it lose the vertical profile for that stretch of the design, which is more like what it used to prior to the enhancement. This talks a little bit about that. This is the sub-assembly composer. If you've used Civil 3D for a while, you may not even know this exists. It's sort of an additional check mark that you have to have turned on in the install, but it allows you to create your own. So when you talk about content for a city standard or a county standard, this is where you can make curves that follow the correct shapes. If there's not something in sort of the standard library, in this case, they're putting this shape in sort of a void area, so you can see the changes they're making. So they've created that void inside of that component. And lastly here around vertical layout, this one is adding some curves between these two other curves. It's very similar to the 2D line work stuff that you saw in CAD, but in this case we're choosing a point that we want that new curve to pass through. And so it's just giving us additional options for how to design roadways and connect geometry, whether that's by K value or whether it's by curve radius, all the things that you want to be able to do. And then you can adjust those things, not just graphically, but also in a tabular format for more precision. Besides the engineering in the software, obviously there are a lot of drafting components as well. You have a lot to deal with annotations. Now you can actually show the solids that are being created in the 3D model. So for a long time we've been able to add things to the profile like, for example, utility that we wouldn't typically model. We can take a 3D polyline, and we can take that out of plan, and we can drop it into the profile to show Cox cable or something like that. So now we can have a 3D solid from AutoCAD, and we can go ahead and make that show up in our profile as well. We can change what surface we're annotating to with our different labels in those sections. And so one example of the corridor points here. So here's the labeling. Oftentimes you run a quick section, you end up with more labels than you need to, and so you're able to adjust those to just sort of key points on the corridor, and so it's going to take overlapping labels, it's going to straighten them out. So you're labeling the correct point, and it's kind of spreading them automatically for you, which would take a lot of manual manipulation otherwise. And then here's where you tell it which particular points you want to label and how you want those to be labeled. So it's picking up points meaningful off of that typical cross-section in the scene. And then also we've got a little bit around in labeling in the alignment as well. So to be able to change, in this case we've got station offset, to be able to change what we're actually referencing from the plan view pretty easily now. If you've been sitting on the sidelines for civil for a while, maybe you're using 12, maybe you're using 13, one of the giant enhancements in 2014 was pressure pipe. So now not just be able to do storm and sewer, gravity stuff that's always been there, but now the ability to, let's go bring this over here, to actually manage a water network. So besides pipe networks, you also have pressure pipe networks. So again, maybe creating content for those things can be a little bit tricky, but to be able to have in plan, in your 3D models, in your profiles, in your sections, those real-world 8-inch PVC pipes for water, and those vertical bends, horizontal bends, and everything that you want to be able to do there. And then also they've got some information here about collaboration. So they've been doing a really good job with Civil 3D the last couple of releases since they basically got to the new drawing format in 2013 of making the data go forwards and backwards, open, edit, save across the project team. Historically, you used AutoCAD architecture, you use MEP, you use Civil 3D, you know that when you pull something forward, it updates those objects into that new, even if it's the same DWG format, you just don't have a lot of success going backwards without losing something. And so you're able to do that now. And then we talked earlier about falling in and out of love with Google. When Lewis and I talk, we always talk in KML. And so now you can do KMLs out of Civil 3D again. And we mentioned MicroStation earlier for Caltrans or for NDOT. DGNs having the ability to control more how you export sheets. So I can. This was something I had to do for a project for a client recently where, again, you've got one drawing, it's got multiple sheets. Maybe you want to get rid of your references, maybe you want to generate each of the drawings separately, and you have to produce it in DGN. And so you're able to do a lot of those things now for those agencies without having to worry about doing it yourself. Here's an example in context using something like a Blue Earth to take your information, your surface out and show people what it's going to look like right there. So again, just to recap, those are the areas that we talked about: user experience, the engineering, then the drafting, and then the collaboration with other folks. I think that's about all we had for you today. Appreciate you guys making time to come this morning. Thank you very much.